Hi, it's Paul Banis, the GreatDad.com, and thank you very much for joining either the podcast or the YouTube version of the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you took just a second to subscribe either on your podcast app or in YouTube. It doesn't really do anything. It's not going to send you any emails. It's just going to show up more often on your feed, and it does me a lot of good in terms of getting more exposure for this work I do to support dads. I'd also like to invite you to come to my page, GreatDad.com/go, if you'd like to discuss more about any of the issues that we are covering within the podcast, especially if there's any way I can help you to be a sounding board in your own struggles to be a dad and to be there for your family. So take a look at that. It also includes a link to my course on gratitude, where at greatdad.com/gratitude with a offer to take that course for free. So see you in a second. Hi, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com here in my weekly series talking about modern fatherhood, and I've got a guest today that I've long admired, and I feel like we've known each other for years, even though we have not had that much real personal contact. Welcome, Dr. Larry Cohen.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be with you.
So, Larry, you and I kind of, we were slightly younger men back in the day when men were getting more involved in this discussion about parenting. Obviously, a lot of scientists and in your field, a lot of psychologists involved with parenting, but
Mhm.
only in the last 20 years have a lot more dads been
Exactly.
actively talking about the dad's role in parenting and how important it is. So I've been following you for literally for since our daughter was born 25 years ago, and we're lucky enough to support to serve on a board for the American Society for the Positive Care of Children together, and so we got a chance to get to know each other there, and I'm glad to have you on the show today.
Thank
And you're really famous, at least in our circles, for your
you.
book on playful parenting, which
Yeah.
is kind of it's a name of basically a philosophy of parenting now for a lot of people, and part of what we do in the American Association or Society for the Positive Care of Children in terms of peaceful discipline and positive discipline and all these ideas that kind of are around the same idea of
Yeah.
being more gentle parents. Why do you think that has taken on such a big life? I mean, is it the millennial generation, or is it maybe it's our generation seeing, trying to get past our trauma compared with the generation after us?
I'm not sure. I think things swing back and forth. I think that um, there was an openness to this back 20, 25 years ago when I started
Yeah.
writing about this. Um, I do a lot of work in Eastern Europe and in China now.
Yeah,
It's
right.
sort of like, so now there's this um, kind of an awakening, a kind of, in the US, we had the 1960s, and there's huge generational break before and after the 1960s, and I think that's part of the shift for fathers being more involved. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's happening now in some other parts of the world. Um, I remember when my daughter was born, one time I was alone with my daughter and she was a baby, and I was talking to my parents on the phone. And I said I was, alone with her, with Emma. And they said, "Oh, you're babysitting." And I said, "I call it fathering."
Yeah.
So this was this big, big gap between the way my father, who was very loving, caring father, but he didn't get on the floor and play.
Oh, really?
Like
Yeah.
two times, like my sisters and I can remember maybe two times that he got on the floor and played. Um, but he did other things, he did a lot of other ways to get connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that we're realizing that connection is the heart. And I think if people talk about gentle parenting and playful parenting and connection parenting, it's really all about connection.
Hmm.
The gentleness part is because harshness is so disconnecting. There, there's a lot of other ways to get our goals. When people are harsh, they don't have a goal to be mean. The goal is to get cooperation, to build good character, to have self-discipline. These are the goals behind harsh parenting.
Hmm.
And I think the research is pretty clear that you get the same goals better, not from going to the other extreme and no boundaries, no rules, no limits, but from this middle way where there's a push, but it's a gentle push, where everything doesn't have to be so heavy,
Mm,
where there's emotional understanding. And I named this Playful Parenting after actually the publisher named it Playful Parenting, but it was a wise decision that they made, and I've run with it. But play is in the title because when we're stressed, play goes out the window.
right, right.
But really, it's connection, and play and emotions are the two main ways to connect.
Yeah.
And here talking to fathers and about fathers, if you think about play and emotions, the kind of conditioning that men have, that we have as boys, like play is a field that's really more open to us, relatively more open to us. We were encouraged to play, we were encouraged to roughhouse, we were encouraged to be a little bit wilder and looser in some ways, but we were stunted in our emotional development.
Right.
And so when dads step in to connect with children, I think a lot of dads feel more natural connecting with play.
Yeah.
Whereas the idea of holding a crying baby, comforting a upset older child, what to do with a tantrum, like these are things that kind of can overwhelm us easily because we didn't get that really solid, good education about healthy emotions that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
needed, that we could have had. But throw the kid up in the air, throw the ball, run around, play monster, these kinds of things for a lot of us come more
Well,
naturally.
it's kind of interesting that men are quite often accused of not being not growing up or being immature or whatever. And maybe that ends up being our superpower in terms of the way we use humor and roughhouse
Yeah,
play and just more of an open spirit about that.
yeah. I think it can be. And the other side, the danger is when it becomes too competitive, because we're also conditioned to be competitive. There's a
Mm,
lot of men I've known, fathers I've known, who can't bear the idea of letting their child win a game or wrestle and pin dad down. This gives children such great joy and confidence, and they know it doesn't. They're not dumb, Their kids aren't dumb. They know that you let them win deep down, but some fathers, it's so hard to let go of.
really, even for like if you're wrestling with a 7-year-old, it's really hard to let the kid have the go
Yeah,
for the
I
win.
hear that a lot, unfortunately, but
Uh,
it's yeah, we one of the biggest benefits of roughhousing is that it's a natural laboratory for
right.
moral development and emotional development.
Yeah.
And what do we tell kids? Like, be nice to younger kids. We get kids in trouble if they pick on somebody smaller than them.
Right.
And we love to see a 10-year-old boy playing with a 3-year-old and like letting the 3-year-old win, and bust them around and knock them down in a playful way. So we need to model that. And animals do this, humans do this, that the bigger, stronger one holds back. And this is a sign of love and affection, and it keeps the play going. It makes the play fun. It's funny, even mice do this, which is really incredible. Mice love to wrestle,
Oh, really?
and they kind of wrestle kind of like humans, like a wrestling match. So it's like a
Yeah.
short bout. One of them ends up on their back. Well, if any two mice, one of them is going to be stronger than the other one, but the stronger one only wins about 60 or 70% of the time. And the assumption from the researchers who look at this is that they're letting the other one win, so the other one wants to keep playing.
Right.
Because yeah, I can win every time, but then nobody will play with me anymore.
Well, so I guess I see that when they're like two semi-equal, like two dogs or two mice or whatever, and they're
Yeah,
battling out, they're just playing with each other like we would play tennis or something.
yeah,
Whereas when it's a child and a father,
yeah,
there's something else going on there too, is the excitement and the exhilaration of all that activity but at the same time, the safety of I know he's not
Right.
gonna, I'm not gonna get killed or broken up at the end of
Right.
this. I get the
Exactly.
thrill, but not like you're
Yeah.
riding a roller coaster at a place that's well accredited. You're not
Right.
gonna die at the end,
Right.
but you can get the positive part.
Right. 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 And I really think good roughhousing is more like dancing than like fighting.
Right,
Even if you're play fighting, even if you're wrestling, um, you have to be tuned in to one another.
right,
I often,
right.
when families are looking for new games for roughhousing, or if they have trouble with it, I often suggest slow motion combat,
Yeah,
where you kind of slowly punch and slowly block, or you look up videos of stage combat where you learn how to do it on the stage, where it's very intimate, it's very tuned in. The goal is not to hurt anyone. The goal is to really is to connect, even though on the surface it's a fight.
yeah. Well, that's an interesting part of it because I often think about it being the value for the child maturation process. But it sounds like you're talking also that there's a real important part here in the father and his connection and his bond and
Right.
his tuning in to where his child is at that development stage. You certainly don't wrestle with a 3-year-old the same way you'd wrestle with a 7-year-old.
Exactly. I think tuning in is just so crucial. And as when we're growing up as boys, we don't get a lot of
Yeah,
practice with that kind of tuning in. We're
right.
supposed to be self-reliant and independent. We're supposed to be competitive. Um, and we also are great at friendships, in general, So we have that, but fatherhood is a new way to really practice tuning in. And there's nothing more special than that. I remember when my daughter was a baby, there was a group of us, some friends of mine and friends of theirs, bunch of new dads, and we got together and we were just like, let's hang out together, be a dad's group. So we came with our babies, and as soon as any baby started to cry, the dad would be like, I have to get this baby home to nurse. And I was like, I know your wife. That baby nursed right before you left home. That baby does not have to nurse. I'll hold the baby. So I was like famous for like holding the crying baby because we're all like, ah, it's a
Yeah.
crying baby. I don't know what to do. I can't stand it. It's a
Mm.
terrible sound, especially when you're helpless.
Wow.
Um, and so they would all relax because like I like hold the baby and it's okay. And then they'd cry a while and then they'd stop crying and then they'd
Right.
um
That's interesting. That you hear that a lot from your patients or your clients that that it really creates a lot of tension and anxiety hearing a crying baby, and that leads to unex like a triggered reaction with them.
yeah, I think less so now with dads.
Uh-huh.
This was 30 years ago when I had my dad's group. So, things have changed. I think the more you do the day-to-day parenting and not the Disneyland special occasion
Yeah.
parenting, the more tuned in you are, the more you have the experience of, oh, I've got this fussy baby. I'll try this and this and this, and you have the success experience, um, or you have the no, I didn't know what to do, and it passed. No
Yeah.
baby has ever been fussy and then still fussy 40 years later. Like, emotions come and go. But in the moment, um, it can feel like forever. But yeah, there's been research of like how aversive different sounds are, and babies crying is right up there with like an ambulance siren and things are
But it's usually somebody else's baby who really, I mean, it sets more people off than, I mean,
yeah,
just love babies. So
yeah,
when they're crying in the plane, I always just think of the parents like and how difficult it is for them. But I'm never like doesn't set me off like I guess it would
right, right,
for
right.
some other people. That it always helped me to think like they either need to be changed, fed, or held. And
Right.
we
Right.
didn't
I
have
think the held
classical
is the
ecology then.
important one, right? Because um, this was what the fathers in my cohort really needed to learn is that it's not always something you can fix
Yeah.
with the food or the
Oh,
diaper, that often what the need is for contact and connection and for expression.
Yeah.
So something that I think all parents have a hard time with is seeing emotions as communication.
Yeah.
My niece has twin girls, and back when they were 6 years old, one of them was crying, 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 and wouldn't stop. And my niece was telling me the story. She said, I kept saying, use your words, use your words. Tell me what's wrong so I can fix it. And the girl keeps crying and crying. And it's like, tell me, it's that, desperation. Like, tell me what it is in words I can understand so that I can help you. The other twin turns to her and says, tears are words, Mama.
Oh, wow.
And that's like
That's
the
classic.
great wisdom of children, right? Because we just feel like either we have to do something, we have to fix it. Um, and, things have changed a lot. I don't think as nearly as many boys get told, you know, boys don't cry, or you're being like a girl, or you're being like a baby.
Yeah.
I think that that's come down a lot, though it's still out there some.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's still that sense that it's a problem, and it's bad, and um, we have to
Yeah.
fix it right away, rather
Yeah.
than I'm here with you. I can be here with you, whatever you're feeling.
Yeah.
That I don't have to suddenly make it a good feeling.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly something men are more, we're quite often accused of wanting to fix things rather than treating the
Things,
emotion. I mean, it's
right.
like, again, here, I think children can be a big teacher for us just as human beings in our
Hmm.
interactions with our spouses too. I mean, if you can clue into the fact that your baby is just sending you a signal, an emotional signal that
Right.
you can validate and support, and you can do that with your partner.
Right. Right. My granddaughter she was about 3 or 4 a few years ago, and she had a rose, and she was tearing the petals off the rose. And then she realized what she had done, and she started crying, and she
Uh,
was telling me to put it back together. And I was like, here's a lesson in irreversibility and in the wall that sometimes you hit up against. And I said, I can't put it back together. And she said, try, try, try. And so like I got out the scotch tape, and I'm like scotch taping the rose back together. It looked terrible. And she was so happy, and I think I was so surprised, and it was like, I think that it's this tension, right? Because I think, my whole thing is, sit with the emotion, and the empathy is more important. And I'm going to say, I'll be here with you while you're sad because it can't be put back together. And yet she had a vision, that it could be put back together. And so there's balancing that empathy with trusting our children, and they're smart, and she does need to get the idea that it can't be put back together the way it was.
right.
But I was wrong that it couldn't be put back together at all.
Yeah.
When I put it back together, she was thrilled, and I think she was thrilled that I made the effort.
I think that's probably, yeah.
And it's sort of like kids love their drawings that look like crap, like, I love my drawings that look like crap, it's like I like drawing. And so it's like, yeah, it looked like a mess, but yeah, it was interesting.
Well, it sounds like she really appreciated the fact that you got down at her level and could understand her
Yeah.
sorrow and then
Yeah.
make some effort, even if it was half-hearted.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit more broadly about play, because I think roughhousing. Well, first of all, roughhousing it comes naturally to us, and also I want to get at what are the studies that you know of that support the
Sure.
roughhousing thing, because we hear a lot about it, and I want to make sure it's validated for dads. It isn't just an idea that Larry had, like, fight with your kids and everything will be great, but that there is some science behind it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll make a plug for Unplug and Play.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
this book used to be called The Art of Roughhousing, and it got reissued, and now it's got really cool drawings.
this is the one that you co-authored.
I co-author with Anthony de Benedette. But we review a lot of the research in here about the benefits of roughhousing. And there's this researcher at the University of Minnesota, Of course, I can't remember his name right this second. But he found that children who do a lot of healthy roughhousing, that they are better at friendships, they do better at school. Um, Children actually, he also found children are much better than adults at telling the difference between real fighting and aggression and play fighting.
Oh, right.
So
Oh,
adults
wow.
are terrible
And
at it.
sometimes adults will get in the like, don't do that with your
Yeah,
brother.
yeah, yeah. So what that happens at schools or at homes is like banning. So we're gonna ban all this play because we
Mm,
can't tell the difference. But all you have to do is ask the kids, like, are you playing?
right.
And sometimes like, yeah. And then sometimes one is like, yeah, we're playing, and the other one's like, because because bullies can disguise their bullying
Right. Yeah.
as roughhousing.
Right.
Anthony Pellegrino, that's the name of the researcher. Um, a lot of really good research on the value of roughhousing. There's a woman named Ellen Sandsetter, and she studied risky play. And she's found that children benefit tremendously from being allowed and encouraged to engage in risky play. That it builds their confidence, it builds their independence, builds their self-awareness and self-knowledge. And we've really become a be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful
Yeah. Yeah.
society.
I'm guilty of that.
Me too. And I had a profound experience when my daughter was young, and I was at the playground with a friend and my daughter, and she was climbing up higher than I was comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was fine.
Yeah.
And I was saying, be careful, be careful, be careful. And my friend said, Larry, she'll recover better from a broken arm or a broken leg than from being timid and fearful her whole life.
Yeah.
And that just hit me, and very nicely, my friend didn't say, like you, Larry. No, you don't really want her to be like you about this. And it's like, yeah, so I could really see that. Children need to explore. And that doesn't mean they always have to be doing dangerous things. What it means is they need to be able to choose the level of risk. So if a child wants to go one rung up the ladder, then that's their edge, and we value that they're at their edge. And we don't
Mhm.
say, everybody else is going to the top. What's wrong with you? And the one at the top, we're like, hey, look at you, What are you going to do to make sure it's safe up there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So self-determination of risk is really crucial. And most of us have some aspect of risky play that gets us into fight or flight mode.
Hmm.
So if I listed like getting lost, being near, a fire or a cliff, sharp
Mm.
objects, speed, heights, right? I mean, I can go up with all of those, but I'm
Yeah.
sure that there's nobody who's like, oh, fine, oh, fine, oh, fine for every one of those.
That's amazing. My mind is going back to many, many occasions where I was just deathly worried that my child was going to literally fall off a cliff.
Yeah,
Um, and then the flip side too is not belittling them if they don't want to go on the roller coaster, and
exactly.
you're thinking, at your age, that's all I would have lived for. Just like we're at Disneyland, there, we can go on this all day
Right,
long, and you don't want to go
right,
on it at all.
right. And there's a middle ground, I'm
Right.
glad that car seats exist.
Yeah.
I've bounced around the back of station wagons when I was a kid with no such thing as seatbelts and car seats. And yeah, it's good to have a sense of safety. But my co-author, Anthony de Benedette, he says we've switched from safety first to safety only.
Uh-huh.
And this is the big mistake. That
Yeah.
sure, safety is important, but children are safer when they actually determine their own risk
Yeah.
in play.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. What other things can families do that instills play? I mean, roughhousing is kind of the obvious one. It's so, such an
Mhm.
obvious activity,
Yeah.
but are there other things? I don't know, just as simple as board games or more
Yeah, I
tools
think
that they
that
can think of to further this?
exactly. I think that, when parents say, I don't know how to play, I say, well, you're fortunate you happen to live with an expert.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have a kid, you know an expert in play. And so mostly what we can do is follow. And to create that space, most of what we have to offer is our time and attention.
Mm.
So, hey, I have a half an hour, whatever you want to do. And we don't tell them what we know that they want to do. We wait patiently. And some kids have not had that chance to be in charge of play.
Mm.
So they might flounder a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's tempting to want to help them. But we want to prove that we really want to do what they want to do and not like have them be like, are you going to tell me what to do? Even if I'm asking you to tell me what to do, are you going to sneak in and tell me what to do? So for it to really value free play and child-directed play, I've got my time, my phone's away, I have my full undivided attention. Now you might start with 3 minutes, right? That's fine. There were times when 10 minutes, I'd set a timer for 10 minutes because my daughter wanted to play Ariel, the Little Mermaid, and I was so sick of that game. It was so boring, and I could only do it for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd get into it, and I'd
Yeah.
like for 10 minutes, I could be extra enthusiastic, and then the game becomes more interesting. And it's like, I don't want to stop when the timer goes off. Um, so the time and the place, you don't have to come up with all the games. Dramatic play, and this starts around age 2 or 3, and then really blossoms around 5, 6, 7. Pretend play, make believe play. There was this famous Russian psychologist named Vygotsky. He was big in the 30s, and he did this study where he went into a school. And there was a group of 5-year-olds or 5 or 6-year-olds. And he went into one classroom and he said, stand up and stand still for as long as you can. And they stood still for about a few seconds, probably. And then he goes into the classroom next door, same age kids, and he says, pretend you're soldiers and stand still for as long as you can. And they stood still for a really long time.
Yeah.
3 words,
Yeah.
pretend you're soldiers. And pretend is the one word, that matters. And so he said, he was famous for saying children are a head taller in play.
Hmm.
So, hey, let's play. Hey, let's pretend. Children don't want to come to dinner. It's like, oh, it's time for all the astronauts to get their, astronaut food or, whatever it is, or
Right.
the dinosaurs or, whatever they're into. You just add that pretend element. And it doesn't take any extra time. You're just adding the pretend element. The other thing to introduce play into everyday life is role reversal, where the child in play gets to be the more powerful one.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of variations of this.
Uh,
So child who's very slow about getting dressed, well, you don't know, you put your shoe on your head,
yeah.
and now you're the one who is incompetent about getting dressed. They can show you how to do it. They laugh, they get dressed. Right?
Yeah.
Toddlers, you fall over, they laugh. They're not the only one falling over. Child playing piano, no. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to show you how to do it. Like, no, that's not how to do
No,
it.
no. You,
This is how to do it. Child who doesn't want to go to bed, you can say, how would you like to put daddy to bed tonight? Like you be the daddy, and
you'd
I'll be
show
the
me your
little
strategies.
kid, and you get me to bed, and you can whisper like, do you want me to be really uncooperative and difficult? And now this, you have to be brave to do this game because they're going to show you um, like all the ways, all the things you say, not all of this is your best, right?
Yeah.
Or they'll be the perfect mommy and the perfect daddy and say, oh, you don't have to go. I mean, from their point of view, perfect, right? You don't have to go to bed. Oh,
Yeah.
one more story, one more story. Oh, sure, one more story. Or they'll say, you stupid kid, go to bed. But being in that role is more powerful. And that is it heals from the little upsets of life. It can actually heal from big upsets of life, right? So, kids who've had very serious medical problems, and part of the emotional healing is they pretend to be the doctor and they come after me with the pretend knife. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Or they pretend that they're kicking all the doctors, and the parents like, they're gonna kick the doctors at the next appointment. It's like, no, they know the difference. Like,
Yeah.
this is play, and in play, they can be powerful.
We've talked a little bit about how important it is for their development and the connection. Do you have people who resist the idea of having a fun-filled, laugh-filled house, or is that, I mean, is that everybody's goal? Is the perfect family would be all, giggling and laughing and having a good time all the time?
Well, I'm sad to say it's not everyone's goal. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
adults are stressed and we are overloaded with
Yeah.
responsibilities, and we have very serious responsibilities, and this can make us extra serious. Um, I think times like this in the world, when the economy is not strong, then you have a lot of people who are worried that, we can't do fun and games. No,
Yeah.
there's something more important to be done. The studying is more important, or practicing piano, or being not just playing sport to have fun, but develop your skills so you can go pro. Like, um, this takes things out of play, takes kind of wears away the playfulness of
Yeah.
life.
Right.
Um, so all kinds of stress, but certainly stress of violence makes it hard to be playful, and economic stress makes it hard to be playful.
Hmm.
Not just hard to be, but like, I don't want to be.
Right.
There's something more important. And I would say, yes, there are times when you just can't play and it's not right to play, but there's never a time when it's not right to connect.
Yeah.
And so maybe the way we connect is more heart to heart and the emotional level, and not with laughter. Um, but if we have a life where we can have laughter and lightness, then why not?
Well, I certainly agree with you there. I guess I just find it part of the fabric of life and the joy of life, and I'm interested in the fact that the play could lead to maturation and development and greater quote
Yeah,
unquote success. But even more important than that, I think the thing that we're always trying to communicate with our kids is that we want them to be happy individuals. And
right.
the reason for learning isn't just so that you can get a better job, but it's also that you can understand the whole tapestry of interconnectedness of all these things, and have this greater appreciation.
Right,
Um,
right. The joy of learning is so central to a happy life, I think. And but we get distracted. There was a mom who said to me, I was so mad at my son. I was trying to get him to go, whatever it was, I can't remember, to go do what he was supposed to be doing. And he stopped to look at a cricket that had gotten in the house and was on the floor. And I couldn't pull him away. And he was just looking at that cricket and looking at the cricket and talking about it. And And it's like, and I couldn't get him to go and do and, sit and, do his schoolwork. It's like,
Studying the cricket.
you want this child to have the capacity to focus and concentrate, then let him lead the way. He's practicing focus and concentration. And we pull kids away from practicing focus and concentration, which is usually in play. That's where they're focusing and concentrating naturally.
Hmm.
But they're not wasting their time. They're practicing focus and concentration, which they will need for success in life. But if we say, stop doing that stupid thing and come focus and concentrate on these math problems, well, now we have to force them to do something that was coming so naturally.
Yeah.
And they're not getting good practice.
Yeah.
And our brains develop best when there's joy in the learning. it could be a quiet joy, it doesn't have to be jumping up and down. But this is the other big plug I'll say for play, which is that our brains are loaded with all these different pathways. So there's trillions of neurons, and they're organized into language and emotion and social interaction and physical um, actions and senses. Like they have all these different areas. Um, well, when we're sitting at a desk doing math problems, we're using a tiny sliver of the brain. And then we tell kids, don't talk to anybody.
Right.
We're telling them, don't play, don't goof around, sit still. So we're actively blocking all the other pathways except this one little one.
Yeah.
And this is not the way the brains develop best. Brains develop best when many pathways are active at the same time. So you
Right.
see the same kid and they're playing, and there's they're playing with blocks, let's say. Well, they're doing math and they're doing physics, and they're using their social brain and their language brain and their emotion brain, and they get frustrated and then they overcome the frustration and they feel a joy and accomplishment, and they're talking to their friend and they're moving their bodies. Well, now the whole brain is engaged, and this develops neural connections. This is what learning is. This is what education is. All about neural connections.
Hmm.
And we still have this outdated education system, um, where from very early age, we're supposed to just be doing this little sliver.
Yeah.
And um, and of all these pathways, the social one is the most important. If the social brain is active at the same time as the math brain and the language brain and the science brain and the, you know, all these other things, then you learn better.
Yeah.
But, what's the number one rule in school, right? Don't talk,
Yeah.
don't have fun, don't touch anyone.
That's where I always got my not satisfactories. This was talks too much in class.
Talk too much in class.
I think we
Well,
know that from, I mean, everything we learn as adults too. I mean, in modern business, every so much of what modern business try to incorporate for higher productivity and socialization is all kinds of gamification around everything at work, like more social events and all the rest.
sure.
So we know that works well. And probably our best memories of high school were when the teacher
Yeah.
actually integrated play and quizzes and videos and ways to get the learning in a different way. So why not at home?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Larry, thanks a lot for spending time with me. It's really a privilege to have a long conversation
Yeah, my
with you.
pleasure, Paul.
And I'm just really inspired. I mean, we tried to parent our kids with this approach and found it a lot of different ways. And certainly some of the most fun times I think with the family have been when we've just really been open and silly. And those are the great memories. So again,
Great.
thanks for taking time.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, Paul Banks, GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching offerings at GreatDad.com/go, including a free course on gratitude that you'll find there. Okay, until next time, remember, strong family starts with you. Take care.